the cloud, and that way folks who could not participate today could watch this recording and get trained afterwards. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about me. I am the Director of Educator Preparation Programs at the University of Tampa, and I am one of the developers of the Education Disposition Assessment tool that you're going to be using today. And everyone has a copy of the tool in front of them, right? Thumbs up? Okay.
Yes, we do.
Perfect, perfect. So let's go ahead and go into the purpose of our training today. All right, let me forward this. All right, so here are our webinar goals. I want to talk a little bit about the goals, and then I'm going to talk about the purpose of our training. We're going to be looking at the 9 dispositions and the descriptions of those 9 dispositions and talking about those a little bit and to give you an idea of what we're expecting of candidates as they are demonstrating these important characteristics and traits. We're going to do a series of calibration exercises where you're going to be rating candidates as you are thinking about how you would perceive their dispositions based on the tool and your expertise, of course. And then you're going to be submitting your ratings to me. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be keeping track of your ratings with the ratings of expert scorers. So at the end of our presentation today, I'm going to share with you our inter-rater agreement, and that way you have that for your records and you can report that for your accreditation work and your state approval work as well. But the purpose of the training today is to give you experience in comparing your ratings with expert scorers. Because when you walk away from this training today, we want you to feel confident that you're making accurate and reliable disposition evaluations of your candidates as they are moving through your program, both at admissions and as they exit your program. So the tool itself that you have in front of you is a versatile tool. And I want to explain to you a couple of ways that we recommend that it's used. One way that we recommend it's used is whenever you have a student of concern. So if you are working either as a classroom professor or a university supervisor, or you have a cooperating teacher, whoever it is that you have using this tool, if they are working with a candidate who they feel has challenges dispositionally, this is a go-to tool for you. You don't have to wait and use it at programmatic checkpoints. You can use it at any time, just so long the person using it understands how the tool is to be used, and that's why we do the training. So you would have that faculty member, university supervisor, cooperating teacher complete this form on the candidate, submit it to someone there at the University of Memphis who deals with students of concern. At our institution, we have a committee called the Admission, Retention, Dismissal Committee. And that is a committee of professors. And whenever a student of concern comes before us, it's typically for dispositional issues. And we bring that student in and we create an intervention or remediation plan that we work with that student to support their dispositional growth. So that's one way that we recommend that the tool is used. We also recommend that it's used programmatically at certain checkpoints over time. We recommend that you use it as part of your selection process. So when candidates are applying into your program, you could have a couple of faculty members complete this form on them, and that's part of their application paperwork. And part of your decision making is based on multiple pieces of evidence to look at whether or not this candidate should be admitted into your program. We recommend that it's used programmatically a second time the semester before the final internship. So as part of the application into the final internship, to make sure that as they have been going through your program, they're demonstrating these important dispositions clinically and in coursework, so that way you feel like they do have enough dispositional prowess that they can do well in the final internship. And then the final time that we recommend that you use this programmatically is near the end of the final internship to document that candidates do indeed possess these important dispositions to help them succeed in our profession. All right, so those are the dispositions that are part of our tool. The tool itself consists of 9 dispositions and 27 associated indicators of those dispositions. And being familiar with the dispositions and the indicators is going to enhance your scoring accuracy. So that's why we're all here together today. Now, as you look at this slide, you can see that I have the dispositions just kind of listed top to bottom in order. And that same order is going to be followed in the tool that you have in front of you. And we're going to also follow that same order as we go through this training. But I just wanted to share that the order or numbering of those dispositions in the tool or on this slide are not indicative of their relative importance or value, because all of the dispositions are equally important and equally valuable. So I wanted to share that in case you were wondering. All right. So we find that administration of the tool itself is enhanced when you have a clear and collective understanding of the 3 scoring levels used. So we're going to take a look at those scoring levels next, and I'll talk about those a little bit more. It's also enhanced when you have a good understanding of the operational definition of the 9 dispositions that are included in the instrument. So when the University of Memphis adopted our tool, there was a technical guide that came with it. And in that technical guide, there are deeper definitions, more in-depth definitions of what these different dispositions are. However, if you're using the tool and you haven't had an opportunity to dig through the technical guide, you can look in the meets expectations column. And in that column, that pretty much helps define what we're looking for with those candidates for each of those different dispositions. The calibration exercises we're going to do today gives you opportunities to compare your scoring with one another, which will be really interesting to see how you rate these candidates at your institution, and to compare your scoring with master scorers ratings to check your agreement before using the tool. And like I said, I'll report that, I'll keep track of that, and I'll report it as we get to the end. So here are the 3 scoring levels that we use in our tool. We go across a 3-point Likert scale, where we have performance level descriptors starting with needs improvement, moving on to meets expectations. And each disposition consists of a set of parallel definitions or indicators going across that 3-point Likert scale. And you'll notice that some of the dispositions have 3 indicators, some have 2 indicators, some have 4, some have 5. It all depended on what the subject matter experts who helped us develop this tool told us needed to really, really, really be included to identify or capture that construct, that disposition. So the number there, that number or those indicators under each disposition, they're there to guide your rating or scoring. There will only be 1 score per disposition. So as you are looking at the scenarios today, and as you are rating your candidates as they're moving through your program, they will only receive 1 score for oral communication each time they're scored, 1 score for written communication, 1 score for professionalism, and so forth. But you're going to use those indicators to guide your rating. Okay? So when rating your candidates, you're going to be thinking, in my best professional judgment, how is this student performing? And sometimes all 3 indicators are going to apply to a certain situation or a certain judgment. Sometimes only 1, sometimes 2. It just depends. And you'll see what I mean as we go through our training. So next steps, that's a picture of the technical guide that came with the adoption of this tool. So I just wanted you to see what it looked like. And that's where we have the more in-depth definitions or descriptions of the dispositions. And I just wanted you to be aware of that. But for those of you that really, really enjoy reading about tool development or are doing the assessment report for the state or CAPE or whichever accrediting body you might be using, this guide has the methodology, description of how we created this tool. It has the psychometric properties of the tool itself. So you can report that out because they're going to ask about reliability and validity. But in addition to that, it has a detailed timeline suggesting how to use this tool with your candidates as they move through the program. It also has curricular intervention strategies or ideas where you can go in and look at films. We suggest films, we suggest research papers, articles you can have your candidates read. We also have an example of an intervention plan. So if indeed you do have a candidate who's having trouble, you can use our intervention plan. We have it there for you. We have verbiage that you can add to your application to help them understand the purpose of this tool and why it's used in the program. So I just wanted to share that because it's a nice little booklet. It has lots of information in there that can help you in using and implementing this tool. So we're going to hop right on into the training. The training is meant to be interactive. So I'm going to ask you at certain points to unmute so you can talk with one another. But as I'm talking, I'm going to ask you to just keep it muted. That way we don't have a lot of feedback or reverb. But what I'd like you to do, because we talked about the ratings already on the 3-point Likert scale, but what I'd like you to do, I want you to think of the ratings in a slightly different way, a more practical way, when you are rating the candidates in the following scenarios. I want you to think of a needs improvement where there's minimal evidence of understanding and commitment to the disposition. I want you to think of that as an actionable type of rating, because one of the things that our states and our national accreditors love is when we have actionable data. And that's what this EDA provides for you. If you have a candidate who is showing such egregious behavior that they need to be called in for an intervention or remediation, that's a needs improvement. That's actionable. You're going to bring that candidate in, you're going to talk with that candidate, and you're going to write up a plan to help that candidate improve. So think of 0, needs improvement, as actionable. The developing, where there's some evidence of understanding and commitment to the disposition, I want you to think of that as coachable or teachable. So now you have a candidate whose dispositions are not quite where they need to be, but with a little bit of coaching, if you sit down with them and this is a teachable moment, you can talk with them, that would be developing. You're not writing a specific intervention plan to help this candidate because they think just coaching might do it. And then the meets expectations, where there's considerable evidence of understanding and commitment to the disposition, that's the gut it, okay? So you'll read what we're gonna do. The steps for the training are as follows. You're gonna look into the tool and read through the different indicators to make sure that you're using the tool to guide your ratings. I'm going to guide you in to each of the different vignettes or scenarios we're about to see. Some of these scenarios are based on our research. Some of them are based on what happened in our institution that we could share with you. And some of the vignettes or scenarios are based on what other adopting institutions have shared with us. They've sent us some scenarios and said, rate it, and what do you think? I'd love to hear what other people think of this. So we've been able to do that. So that means that for some of these scenarios, I have a little more context than others, but I'm going to guide you into each one before I actually share the scenario. So that way you have as much context as I can give you before you rate the candidate. So then go back and look into the tool and then unmute and share your ratings with each other. And I'd love to hear how you're rating these different candidates. So we're going to start with the very first disposition that's on your tool, demonstrating effective oral communication skills. So before I share the scenario, I'm going to guide you into it. So I'm not going to show it to you yet. I'll tell you about it first. All right, so for oral communication, this takes place in a clinical setting. Here we have a teacher candidate who is being observed. Her university supervisor is in there. And this candidate is giving directions to her students. I want you to read it and then tell me how you would rate this candidate. Here we go. What do y'all think? You can move up here so we can talk. So, and like I said, sometimes all of the indicators will work, sometimes only one, sometimes two. So don't feel like you have to do every indicator. Just kind of see which one speaks to you.
Each student can place their name, so it should be each student
Place his or her name, yeah.
That's grandma. See that first one?
Yeah. That is true. I put my.
While she's talking to the students, then she said, "I want you." So yeah, that's directions are not real clear. Is that one of them?
Well, I guess it could be. I guess I put my teacher hat on, and I was thinking about motivation and time. What do they mean, and how does that, I don't know, how that, the meaning of motivation, the meaning of time. I was putting my teacher hat on. Maybe I don't need to put that on.
Yeah. It looked like I didn't
Yeah.
look at it, but I know the grammar is wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's fair because the last one talks about the vocabulary to give it color to simplistic. I don't know what age is, so I don't know what that means.
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of context. So as you're looking at it, you're noticing some grammatical issues. I heard some clarity issues. How would you rate this candidate? Needs improvement?
1.
I would
I would do a 1.
Is it coachable, or is it egregious enough to bring them in to do an intervention?
No, I would do a 1. Coachable.
Okay, so I hear coachable.
I would do a 1.
Yeah.
I would do a 1 too.
Okay, so it sounds like we're kind of leaning toward 1s. All right, let me share with you how we rated it.
Uh-oh.
We gave it a 1. Okay. The intern's oral language had an error in agreement. There were a couple of places I heard you caught the there, as opposed to he or she. But there was another one too that I wanted to bring to your attention. And in her directions, and this one's a tricky one. She said, the 2 reasons the character in our story failed to reach her goal, 2 reasons were lack of motivation and time. And 2 reasons was. So that was tricky and it was hard to catch, but I know that you caught it. I heard you talking. And then the clarity issue. There were multiple step directions for younger children, although we didn't have the age group. That's not a good idea to do that. So we felt like as raters, we have to consider the frequency and severity of the mistakes in making this judgment. And we felt like a 1 was appropriate. This was a very teachable or coachable incident. Okay. All right. So let's go on to our next disposition. If you have any questions, just ask. I'm going to ask. All right. So we're going to go to the one for demonstrating effective written communication. Now, this one's kind of interesting. I do have a lot of context on this one. What we're going to be looking at in just a second is an email to a professor from a teacher candidate who is unhappy with a grade that was received on an assignment. Okay, so that's a little bit of context, but let me build some more context. This is a student who sat through an entire semester with this professor, and the presentation was done at the end of the semester. At the beginning of the semester, the professor distributed the first day of class her syllabus. The syllabus is one of those that's extremely detailed. It's 45 pages long. It has every description of every assignment. It has valid and reliable rubrics in it. So the big presentation done at the end of the semester was gone over in class, the first day of class, just briefly. But as it came closer to the time that it's due, the professor spent time going over what the expectations were. She did a model demonstration for the students. She actually even put the students in groups and had them rate her demonstration using the rubric so that they were very familiar with what she was expecting for this big final presentation. The student did the presentation, was unhappy with her grade, and now you'll see the email.
Oh. So was she present the day that the demonstration was? Was she? Yay.
Yeah, see, we don't know that part.
Yeah. But she didn't, it's like she didn't pay attention to what happened in the class.
I feel as though I always get the justification of, I'm just really confused. Because I'm confused. You're confused because you were texting or not paying attention while I was explaining it. That's why you're confused. And so not to be sassy, but at the same time, like, you know, I would ask them to be more detailed and specific with their question. Like, what exactly are you confused about? After reading the syllabus and the rubric, can you identify for me which parts still appear confusing to you? And like, that would be my response. And if they weren't able to generate something, I would still welcome them to come and visit with me, because that's not an issue. I'm happy to come to my office so we can talk through it. But I want them to be responsible for their own learning as well.
I'm thinking if this is teacher preparation, the statement that I find interesting is, I am looking at the rubric from the syllabus and am confused on the grading. Since you failed
Yeah.
to provide an example,
Yeah.
like if a teacher's going to send that to a principal, like, are we preparing them for success?
Look at that tone. That tone's super important there. And what I often tell folks when we're deciding how to rate this candidate, because it's usually between two of the scores, I tell them, if you read this, if this came to you and you had done everything this professor had done, would the hair on the back of your neck go up?
Yes.
Yeah, and mine would, personally.
Yes.
They'll walk away. Gotta go back to it tomorrow. Can't respond to me.
How are we going to rate this candidate?
0.
Zero.
There's another
Need to-
thing. I really work with my students on saying, good afternoon, Dr. M, and then signing their name.
Right.
Yeah, and that's such a good point. I'm hearing mostly zeros, so I'm going to say we agree
Right.
with one, because guess what? We gave it a 0. And
Yeah.
is because a couple of things you said. The salutation did not address the professor by name, and although subtle,
Yeah.
it's construed as disrespectful. But beyond that, when you have a candidate that doesn't bother to use your name, they depersonalize the professor, and therefore it's easier to go in and write an email because the tone shows that she wasn't caring about that professor as a person. She depersonalized her and was just mad. That's what it looked like to me. To me, it felt as though this candidate was not looking for a positive discussion. There was a very negative dynamic. And I do want to express that it's very important what you said when I loved whoever said that. When you are writing emails, morning, Dr. So-and-so, good morning, Mr. So-and-so, good morning, Professor So-and-so, and signing your name, because that shows respect. And if you're putting students out into schools, we don't want them sending an email like that to their principals, to their peers, to the parents of the children they're teaching. We want to encourage students to have dialogues with people that they're in a disagreement with without accusing that other person, expressing concerns in a professional manner. And this candidate the tone was very accusatory, blaming, you did not do this, you did not do that. She was defensive, not opening, but closing dialogue. So we are on the same page. That is amazing. That's so good. Because sometimes we have people say, if someone just said good morning to me, I'd be happy. It's like, no. We got to push them beyond that for professionalism. All right, so good. All right, so speaking of professionalism, that's the next disposition we're going to go to, demonstrating professionalism. This one takes place in a clinical setting, and here we have a cooperating teacher who has an agreement with her teacher candidate, and that agreement is that every Thursday morning, the teacher candidate comes in and submits her lesson plans for the next week. And so that day, on that Thursday, that gives the cooperating teacher plenty of time to read over the candidate's lessons for the next week, tweak them, make suggestions, ask questions. And then on Friday, they typically meet, go over what the teacher thought about the lessons, and the student then has the weekend to kind of fix anything, organize anything, and then teaches those lessons the next week. She doesn't teach anything that Thursday or Friday from the stuff she turns in. It's all for the next week. But this is what happened one Thursday morning.
Oh, she could not do that to a principal. Mm-mm. No, when you're told to do something by an administrator, you do it. And that's, the CT was the administrator.
And then I think maybe context could affect the rating on this too. If it happened 2 times in the first 3 weeks of the semester, and 2 times and you're in week 11 of the semester. So just kind of think, we don't know the context. Would that affect how you think about this?
The family emergency part would concern me when you think about some of the things that our students are agonizing and enduring through. So I think I'm going to need more information, but I'm also going to give her either a 0 or 1 on her on this scenario. But also we got to think about the fact that she said she had a family emergency, and the stories that I hear and the proof that I get makes me want to be more informed.
So I'm here. This is a tricky one. This is definitely typical.
Yeah.
Folks struggle between 0s and 1s on this one. So how are we kind of generally feeling?
And this is 3 weeks, you said?
It could, no, see, we didn't have that context.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Affected it. If this would have been 10 weeks in, you'd be thinking more one way. If it's 3 weeks in, you might be thinking more another. We didn't have that context.
Okay. Okay. That would also make a difference. Because if it was 10 weeks in, I'd give a 0. If it was 3 weeks in, I'd look at developing.
All right. So are we kind of leaning towards 0s? Is that what I'm hearing? Or are we leaning toward 1s?
Leaning towards 0. And what we don't know is what is the time span in which the cooperating teacher asked for the lesson plans by
Right. We don't know that.
a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance.
Or 1 week. What she does is she gets them on Thursday, and then they teach them the next week.
Okay.
So, yeah, and that's kind of an agreement they have. They come in every Thursday morning, and then the student will teach them the next week.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you waited until she arrived at school to tell her and not contact her immediately when an emergency is. Yeah.
That's true. Well, you don't know when the
there's
emergency.
professional courtesy,
0.
right?
That's right.
To me,
All right, so I'm
0.
mostly 0s.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
where I'm going.
I have a question, Mary.
Yeah.
Mary, I have a question though. On the rubric, the very first button says that they does not submit all assignments, and the second one says they are late. She's submitting it and it's late, so that's why I'm wondering if it needs to be more of a 1.
Yeah, if you use the rubric, if you go into the rubric and look at the rubric, you might want to reconsider how you'd rate this candidate.
I agree with Annette. I would go with developing. And I was wondering if this would be an instance where you could, where you recommended at the beginning to conduct this assessment when an occasion like this comes up, where the candidate is not consistently abiding with the professionalism or the dispositions.
Right. So if this were something that happened 2 times in the first 3 weeks, I wouldn't want the university supervisor to wait till the end of the semester to rate this candidate. I would want this to come right on in, and then pull the candidate in. But if it's something that happens later in the semester, oh my gosh, you had an emergency, I'm so sorry. So I'll tell you how we rated it. It kind of sounds like you guys are on the fence, so I'm going to give us an okay that we're in a kind of an agreement here, because it isn't on the fence one. But we went ahead and went with a 1 because we weren't really sure of how long this candidate had been in there. But we felt that due to the nature of emergencies, we gave the student the benefit of the doubt. It's important though, and I heard you say it, it's important to complete your responsibilities on time would be how we would coach this candidate. We would tell this candidate you needed to contact your cooperating teacher as soon as you had an idea of what the family emergency was. But again, we don't know when that emergency happened. We don't know the nature of it. It's just, you know, we're dealing with a lot of kids. We're dealing with a lot of things, a lot of stressors. I think I heard Helen say it. And because of that, we gave this candidate the benefit of the doubt. But again, I would recommend that what the person who just spoke a few seconds ago, if this happened 2 times in 2 or 3 weeks into it, we pull the candidate right away and say, listen, this cannot be a pattern. This cannot be a pattern. Okay. Now we have a second one for demonstrating professionalism. And I'm going to guide you into this one too. This one takes place in a clinical setting. Here we have a teacher candidate and a cooperating teacher who apparently have a very comfortable relationship with one another. Because on Monday morning, the cooperating teacher and the teacher candidate always come together and catch up on what they did over the weekend. They do this. The students get to school at 8. They both get there at 7. They want to get there nice and early so they can set up. But as they get there, they close the door and they just kind of start chit-chatting. No students are around. Doors are closed. Windows are locked. No one can hear them but the 2 of them. This is what happened.
Oh my.
Teaching. She didn't help that, but it's still there. Oh, well. So they fired her right in there.
That almost sounds like an ethics scenario that we were writing yesterday.
I would say 1 though, because the mentor has to take some ownership to allow that lines crossed.
What would you say?
This hinges on how you feel about drinking, to me. Because whether it's a minor boundary of ethical standards or a major one.
That's true too.
Mm-hmm.
I say 1 just because the mentors allow this casual relationship to occur.
I was thinking the same.
Yeah.
The mentor has opened up this door, and this is something that they've been, this is how their relationship has, right? They've been in contact and been part of the relationship. So
I'm hearing 1s.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, let me share with you how we rated it. We rated it a 1. And this is a one. Some schools immediately, everyone goes to the 0 default. But when you look at it and you look at the scenario, it did not appear as though there were any uncomfortable responses from the cooperating teacher. It appeared as though they had a nice relationship where they kind of talked about their personal stuff and then they got right on into the work. So it rated developing because although the candidate should never engage in inappropriate conversations with the cooperating teacher, even if the cooperating teacher shares it first, no students were present and their relationships seemed to allow such exchanges. So what I would recommend if this were brought to the attention of the university supervisor is a little bit of a coachable time. And like I heard you say, y'all were doing some ethics scenarios yesterday. This would be a great type of thing to share with candidates. It's not appropriate. I mean, I know you might feel very, very comfortable, but you got to always take that high ground and not go there when that kind of conversation is happening. So we would coach this candidate, just like you recommended. Okay, good. Let's go to the next disposition of developing or demonstrating a positive and enthusiastic attitude. Now for this one, we're in a clinical setting. And here, this is a high school student who's up there teaching, a high school candidate. She's trained to be a high school teacher. And she is up in front of her classroom in her internship, and she's executing a lesson. And you know how it is when you're beginning to teach. You're executing that lesson. You probably have a lesson plan nearby to make sure you stay on task. You're also very, very concerned with the classroom management aspect of it. So you're thinking about classroom management, you're delivering this lesson, and suddenly a student approaches her, and this is what happens.
Oh. Huh.
My only question is, was the student supposed to be seated at the time? True.
Well, even so, you still say, that's really great, but I need you to sit down right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think a one.
We'll get 0.5. I mean, I just like that.
She also has no affect.
She definitely,
Teacher has no
Yeah.
affect.
she definitely demonstrates a flattened
Yeah.
Definitely.
Zero. Yeah. I
But
mean, she responded, so that was 0.5. But not, she responded, but not to the
Negatively. Take a seat.
Right, she dismissed it.
mm-hmm.
So
I kind of agree with the
Eddie was a
zero.
struggling student.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's
bad person.
Yeah. A zero.
Well, you want,
Yes, it was a struggle.
I'm gonna say 1 because she overlooked, if you look at the rubric at the last bottom, she said she overlooks and she obviously overlooked opportunities to demonstrate positive effect. So she's coachable. She's a high school teacher candidate, and she just needs someone, she needs her mentor or whomever, cooperating teacher, to just talk to her about a missed opportunity to compliment a student. You know, don't ever miss those opportunities. It's coachable, I say.
I agree with you, Helen.
Okay.
I agree with that too. We don't know how consistent her behavior was.
Right. Right. Okay, so I'm hearing ones. Kind of, we're leaning toward ones now.
Yeah, I think I would. This Mary.
Okay, well, let me share with you how we rated it. We rated it a 1. And I heard the conversation. You're right. We're so powerful in our interactions with our students, our P through 12 students, that this authentic and genuine praise when warranted is needed. But we felt as though what really was kind of happening here, because we didn't see it, this is one that we read about. We don't know the candidate's facial gestures, but it kind of seemed as though it was lacking a whole lot of excitement there. But we felt that what happened here was coachable. This candidate lost the moment to genuinely connect in a positive way with this student. So we talk about the importance in all of our programs, I know you do, about the importance of genuine and authentic praise when warranted. So maybe there could have been something that this candidate could have done, a thumbs up, a nod. But again, this is a teacher candidate trying to teach a lesson, trying to deal with classroom management, and all of a sudden someone comes up and goes, oh, I got an A. It's like, well, if you allow that, now what do I do? You know, maybe there's that deer in the headlights kind of feeling. So I felt like you felt that this was teachable and coachable. Okay, so let's go to the next disposition, and this deals with demonstrating preparedness in teaching and learning. Now this one takes place, this is a final intern, and so it's in a clinical setting, and this is a final intern who had been working with the university supervisor. The university supervisor is trying really hard to help this intern improve, and let's read and find out what happened.
What do you mean by final internship, Gina?
This is the semester, the very end of their training. This is the
Very last. Okay, their last semester.
yeah,
Okay.
last semester. They're out in the school all day, every day teaching.
Okay. Ooh. Rejects constructive feedback, evidenced by no improvement, no implementation of feedback. Yeah, 0.
I think a 0, but only because the steps weren't taken, the action steps weren't taken, because, you know, I could work hard and still not improve. And this is a novice, but because they didn't go through the steps, that's why I would do a 0.
I agree.
All right, so I'm hearing a lot of zeros. Okay, let me share with you how we rated this candidate. We're in agreement.
Yeah.
Good.
And this is a tricky one because some people think, oh my gosh, that word rejects constructive, because the candidates seem to be collaborative in nature, but still, was the rejection blatant? I don't think so. Or is the candidate just unable to receive and implement the feedback? Either way, the university supervisor was working hard to see improvement with this candidate and did not. And therefore, this signaled a real need for intervention or remediation. This is a definite action plan. You need to bring the candidate in, you need to do an intervention with this candidate, and really, really work carefully with this candidate. So I'm glad you caught that, because that rejects constructive criticism. Sometimes that word rejects throws people, but it didn't throw the University of Memphis. Okay, good.
Now, if this had been a candidate maybe in her very first placement that didn't show improvement, that would make a difference. Maybe he or she was coachable, but being in the last one, no.
Yeah, you definitely want them to be able to take direction and move with it and follow those action steps, or the important steps that you set together to have them improve. Yeah, that's good. Very good. All right. So let's go to the next disposition. And this deals with exhibiting an appreciation of and value for cultural and academic diversity. And this is an interesting scenario. It does take place in the clinical setting, and it happens as there's a transition time happening. So there's no teaching, but we have the candidate who is up in front of the room. She's either at the Promethean board getting it set up or maybe setting up some materials. So the students have just a couple of minutes where they're transitioning, where they're able to talk with one another. And as this is happening, not the cooperating teacher, the intern hears one student say something about another student. This is what happens.
Zero.
Oh my.
Am I hearing general zero across the board there?
Wait a minute, we have to remain objective and not subjected. So maybe this is, I'm just thinking, maybe this is a coachable moment, because some of our candidates really need coaching in this type of situation. So saying kids will be kids, we're going to have to sit down, we're going to have to talk about this because you missed an opportunity. I don't know. I'm just thinking this student needs some help. This student grew up in one of our rural areas. Well, let's think about our population. So,
I think because of that second bullet, it's not a safe classroom. They didn't kind of make it a safe classroom. There's no attempt in that scenario.
Okay, so I'm still hearing, although that's a good point that Helen just made.
I know, but I'm in.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of think that we're mostly zeros there. So I'm going to share with you how we rated it.
Yeah.
We gave it a 0.
Yeah.
So the candidate, as you look into the tool, did not address the obvious negative behavior with the child talking back about another child. And that perpetuates an environment that does not value the differences. But what happens when you ignore, and you're so right, Helen, sometimes these kids just don't possess these skills on how to deal with this difficult stuff. But we need to talk to them about, if you ignore this type of behavior in your students that you're teaching, you end up normalizing it. And then that makes it okay. And it's never okay for children to talk to other children like that. But what we have to do as teacher educators is think about our curriculum and how we have to teach our candidates to foster a safe and welcoming environment where all of their students feel like they belong and that they're cared for. And this is challenging. So maybe do we go into our classroom management class and think about how we can maybe do some role playing when something like this happens to give them some of that skill set. Because this is hard stuff. This is that social emotional learning aspect of the work. These skills are not easy. So that would be something that we could self-reflect. We want to make sure that we are not having our students feel uncomfortable in dealing with these types of situations. Okay, good. All right, so the next disposition deals.
So let me ask you something.
Yes.
Because I would, even though I know what you're saying, I would have given this a 1 and felt good about giving it a 1. Is that just so out of the box for me to think that? Or, you know, what is your opinion, or what does the validity and reliability or whatever say about the fact that Helen would have given her or that person a 1 and set up some coaching and time and stuff like that? So
how would that affect it? If you
right.
iterate reliability between your institution, because most everyone there said a 0 immediately.
Right. I'm the outlier. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and that's okay. So that would affect the iterate reliability there at your institution. What that means is that the majority of your colleagues would have given this a 0.
Right.
Would have given it a 1, and you would have dealt with it slightly differently. And I guess in a way that's okay, but it's really important that folks at your institution kind of have a collective understanding what the ethos there is. Our colleagues felt like this is something we need to just, work with. You might need to kind of consider that as something that would kind of guide your rating of this candidate.
Okay.
My institution would really think, what we need to bring this candidate in. Maybe we should bring this candidate in.
So I'm looking at the handbook on page 21, and in the paragraph that kind of elaborates on the appreciation of value of culture for diversity, it says, inclusion permeates in all areas of teaching and learning, blah, blah, blah. And just prior to that, it says, culturally aware educators consider the differences of others and do not allow such diversity to dictate their actions adversely. And based on that is where I come up with my rating of 0.
Okay, so that's helpful. And these conversations, and that's why this training is so important. And then you can have these types of conversations there with one another, but that just gives you an idea. And if indeed, Helen, you ended up rating this candidate a 1 and coached her and things worked out, it's not going to be the end of the world.
Right. To me, when you get into dispositions and individuals are rating, sometimes we become more subjective than objective. And so I just try to be real careful that I don't allow my own
bias
to get involved in it. So anyway.
Go back to the tool. Because if you go back into the tool, ignoring negative behaviors, that would have given it straight up 0. Okay. So if you have a question, go back into the tool, and the tool might work for you that way.
Okay.
That's what I would recommend. Okay. So collaborate effectively with stakeholders is our next disposition. And for this one, this is one where we have a teacher candidate and her cooperating teacher working in a team meeting with other teachers at that grade level. And what they do is they come together once a week and they plan, units of instruction, and they all get together and they're sharing ideas and talking about what they're planning. And this is what happened at that meeting.
Yeah, 0. She
I would say-
she was very forward. So generally disrespect, interruptions.
And-
Okay, so 0.
I would say a 0 for sure, because this candidate is showing, you know, he or she's not able to work in a professional learning community.
Okay, anybody else?
I'd like to know how consistent this behavior was.
Yeah.
Was it like one incident, or it's been consistently this way?
Yeah, and that we don't know. We don't know. If this was something that was consistent that we saw in our candidates, yeah, that would definitely be an issue, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So
But
if
for her
if
to abruptly assert, no, that won't work, to another person in the room, that's just so rude. And the word disrupt continues and abruptly asserted. So very negative.
Okay, so I'm kind of hearing we're all leaning towards 0s. Let me share with you how we rated this candidate. We gave her a 0.
Yeah.
You know, we know that respectful dissent is essential to any important discussion and collaborative situation, but that wasn't happening here. She doesn't demonstrate the ability to accept others' ideas and opinions in a respectful way. And it's interesting, I heard you guys talking about rudeness and respect and that type of thing. And when I did this training about 2 years ago with a university out in Missouri, one of the gentlemen there said, you know, there's a fine line between confidence. We want our students to be confident, and rudeness. And this candidate stepped over that line, and she was just downright rude. And if this is a one-time thing, it needs to be nipped in the bud right away. If this is something we see continually, wow, we really need to do something with this student. But either way, this, our opinion as expert scores, we put her at a 0. Okay, so we were in agreement there. All right, so the next disposition is demonstrating self-regulated learner behaviors and taking the initiative. We'll have 2 for this one, but the first one is from a clinical setting. And here we have a teacher candidate who is looking for an answer to a question, and this is how he approaches his teacher, and this is what he does.
One.
Okay, so I'm hearing 1s.
He's coachable.
Coachable.
Teachable. Okay, let me share with you how we rated it. We gave him a 1. The operative word there was simple. If the candidate's asking questions that can be answered by exerting a little bit of effort, that type of behavior generally does not bode well for people on the receiving end. And when we created this tool, we had 350 subject matter experts help us with the indicators that you find in the cells. And some of those experts were principals. And principals in particular had a really strong negative reaction about fielding questions that could be answered by doing a little bit of homework ahead of time. So I know we have state standards, you have state standards, and one of our state standards specifically says our candidates must know how to access and use appropriate materials and resources. So we really work with our candidates and having them be proactive and taking the initiative to find the answer. If this happens once in a while, it's okay. It's coachable. But it would have been rated a 2 if the question was really super hard. I mean, if we have candidates going to teachers every once in a while and saying, you know, I need to get the demographic distribution of students per grade level at this school, where do I go? Okay, that's a hard one. Okay, they should go to the teacher for that. The rating would be a 0 if the candidate consistently demonstrated this type of behavior. Okay. All right, so the next scenario is from this same disposition. We're still dealing with demonstrating self-regulated learner behaviors and taking the initiative. And I wanted to share this one because this one is from a classroom setting, because this tool works well for professors teaching courses as well as for professors who are out there in clinical experiences with the students. It's well in both places. And this particular scenario is pulled from an elementary ed diagnostic reading course. And here we have candidates who are required to conduct a diagnostic prescriptive reading tutorial project. And in this project, they're assessing their little students' reading abilities. They're analyzing once they've assessed. And then they're working with these struggling readers to improve their reading skills. They have to write a big paper at the end talking about what they did and how their tutoring impacted student learning. So this is how the student did. It's long, so I'll give you a sec to read it.
Mm-hmm. Effective teaching style. This is my dream candidate.
Yeah.
Where are they?
2.
Twos? Am I hearing twos?
Yes.
Okay. Yay. We finally get a Mesa expectation. You're almost to the end because these are easy. The minute you read it, you probably thought, oh, not even my classes. You know this type of student, hardworking, resourceful, gets the work done, gets it done right. They move through tasks independently. So the teacher candidate effectively researched the reading challenges demonstrated by the children, uncovered effective remedial strategies, and positively impacted student learning. So yay. Okay, I just wanted to share one that was really a good meets expectations, so to see if we were all on that same page. All right, so now we're down to the last one. And this one deals with exhibiting social and emotional intelligence to promote personal and educational goals and stability. This takes place in a clinical setting. And here we have a teacher candidate who needed help with student engagement in her final internship. She'd been working with the cooperating teacher, and the cooperating teacher felt now it was time to bring the university supervisor in for a special meeting to talk about this situation. This is what happened.
Whoa.
Sorry. Not funny, but it's funny.
Mm.
Say 0 because it depends on how often.
Persevering.
Mm-hmm.
He's personalizing it versus recognizing this.
I get the sense that it's happened multiple times, or there have been problems along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So immaturity,
Mm-hmm.
overreacting.
How are we rating this candidate?
0.
I would say 0, and especially the candidate walked out of the meeting.
Yeah. Well, let me share with you. We rated it a 0 too. The candidate's outburst shows that she had challenges with managing her emotions and the ability to respond in a socially acceptable manner. She did not possess the emotional regulation or ability to respond in a way to the situation at hand that was socially acceptable. It just wasn't. The comment she made to the cooperating teacher, you know, screaming out, "Why do you hate me?" It was inappropriate. It was extreme. It was a bit outrageous. And so we felt like students that display these type of unchecked emotional reactions they need to be called in. There needs to be some type of intervention. It's just not appropriate in a professional setting, like I heard you say, and you're correct. And this actually happened in our program. This was one of ours. And the reason I know so much about it is because Adrienne Wilson, one of the creators of our tool, she happened to be the university supervisor who was sitting in on this meeting. And this candidate, when she got up and stormed out, the cooperating teacher looked straight at Adrienne and said, "Get her things and get them out of my classroom. I don't want her back in here." And he went to the administrator there at the building. This was a high school classroom. Went into the administrator there and said, "She can't come back." And that was the end of it. And so we had to pull her from that internship. We brought her into our review committee. She was very defensive there. And we ended up, you know, of course, having to end the internship. The plan was to put her in a new school the next semester in a different district. Because once you're pulled from a district school in our district, we have to find a different district. So we were trying to go, you know, help her out and work with her. And she ended up self-dismissing. She thought, this isn't right for me. I don't want to be here. I don't like this. So in a way, I guess it was a good thing that she never graduated from our institution with a degree in teacher ed. She ended up pursuing a different path. But the tool backed it up. Had she had any reason to come at us about pulling her out of there, we had this tool that said, whoa, wait a minute. You know, we have some dispositional concerns that are documented on a valid and reliable tool. And so that made it so that if there had been an issue, we were in good shape. And luckily, there wasn't. And so that's it. And except for that one disposition kind of near the beginning where we were wavering between a 0 and a 1, I counted that as an agreement. So because of that, I gave us 100% agreement, inter-rater reliability between the University of Memphis, which is rare, and our expert scorers. We were. Hey. I know, but just be careful now, because next year, if we come back again with a whole different group, I don't want to disappoint anyone if they don't do 100%, but it is truly unbelievable how much we are in sync with one another, which is really, really good. And I will tell you, out of the 120 I've done, I've only had 3 where we had 100% rating.
Wow.
Very rewarding to see.
So Gina, how often do we have to come back and do this? The yearly?
Are you guys CAPE accredited?
We're working on it. We're NCATE accredited.
Okay, good. So you're part of the team here. We're all part of that. What CAPE likes to see is periodic trainings.
Okay.
I tell most institutions is about a year out. You might want to do a refresher for everyone who's here. When you have new folks, have the new folks watch this recording, and that'll count for their training.
Okay.
Everyone who's been trained, we have a refresher training, and that's online. So we don't have to all come together. We'll send you a link for that. It follows the format as this, but you just do it individually where you're rating, and you can see how your rating is compared to expert scorers. And then, Mary, if you would, just send me everyone's name who participated, and thank you. You were all amazing. And we'll send you certificates saying that you have been part of this training.
Great, thank you. Now, when other people sign in or access the training, do they need to tell me and then I tell you, or how does that work?
For the folks that weren't here that need to be trained,
right?
What you do is I'm going to send you the link to the recording, and then you can just shoot that forward to anybody who needs it from this point forward. Okay. All right.
I would just like to say that I really, really like this instrument and love the dispositions that are included in it. I think this is going to be a great instrument for our students. I appreciate that we are aligned with the districts in our country and really taking number 9, social and emotional intelligence. So glad that is included. I love that it's horizontal. I really like it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. That's really nice. I love the testimonials. I love it. And social emotional learning is my area of research. So how that got in there. I kind of pushed to make sure that got in there. But yeah, it's so important. It's just so relevant to what we're doing now.
Exactly.
Like that. And Mary, about a year out from now, just touch base with me and we'll send you the refresher link, And that way your folks can go in and do that. And thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoy using this tool as much as we have and had a lot of success with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye, Jennifer.